The prairie was a sea of dying gold that evening, the horizon the thin blade of orange fire as the sun sank behind the Blackridge Hills, and the only sound was the whisper of grass. Bowing under the weight of the coming night, Jacob Rourke, a rancher, known more for his stubbornness than his kindness, rode home slow, the reins loose in his calloused hands, the ache in his back reminding him of another day lost to drought and debt. His cattle were thin, his barns old, his bones older, and in his heart was the hollow ache of a man who had buried his wife 3 winters past, and never truly left the grave. That's when he saw her by the fence line near the creek, half hidden by a sheet she clutched tight around her frail frame, her hair tangled by the wind, her eyes wide and wild as the dusk. She could not have been more than 20, and yet there was something in her gaze older than the hills themselves, something desperate and cracked like a dry riverbed. "Please take me far away," she cried, her voice barely a thread against the moaning wind. Jacob pulled his horse to a stop, the old mare stamping nervously as if the girl's presence soured the air. "Who are you?" he called, his voice rough from dust and suspicion. What are you doing on my land?" She shook her head, gripping the sheet tighter, her bare feet sinking into the dirt. "I can't stay," she said, the words spilling out like a confession. "They'll find me. They'll come tonight. Please, just take me." Jacob swung down from the saddle, his boots crunching on the dry earth, and for the first time he saw the stains on the sheet, rusty, old, some darker, fresher. His gut tightened. "Who?" he asked again, softer now, though his hand still hovered near the revolver at his belt. She looked over her shoulder to the darkening tree line where the wind now whispered with more teeth than before. "The ones who made me this way," she murmured, "the ones who said I didn't deserve to leave." Her lips trembled, her eyes pleading in a way that cut past his walls and found the tender core he thought long buried with his wife. Jacob hesitated, torn between caution and a flicker of the man he once was, the one who might have risked something for a stranger. "What's under there?" he asked finally, nodding to the sheet. She flinched as though struck. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't." But the wind carried a smell with it now, a sharp metallic tang that had no place in a pasture at dusk, and Jacob's instincts, honed by war, by famine, by the hard lessons of the frontier, told him he needed to see. "If I'm to help you, girl," he said slowly, "I need to know what you're hiding." Her breath came fast, her fingers whitening on the cloth. "You won't help me after," she said, tears bright on her dusty cheeks. "No one ever does." But something in her voice, a hopelessness wrapped in a tiny thread of daring, made him step closer. "Try me," he murmured, and with that, he reached out, his hands rough as bark, and pulled back the sheet. What he saw made him stagger. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to tilt, the sky growing to wide, the land to thin beneath his boots. Her body, what should have been the soft, unmarked shape of a young woman, was carved with symbols he did not know, deep and dark as though etched by fire, spiraling from her collarbones down to her bare feet, each one a wound that had long since stopped bleeding, but never truly healed. Across her chest, just below her throat, was a brand, a circle of ash-black skin with 3 slashes like a crow's talons. Around her wrists, shackles had rubbed the flesh raw, and at her ankles, scars told stories he dared not guess. Jacob stumbled back, his mouth dry, the evening suddenly colder. "God Almighty," he whispered. "Who did this to you?" She clutched the sheet back around herself, as if ashamed of the horror revealed. "Them," she said. "The men in the black coats. They said I was chosen, that the marks would make me theirs forever." Jacob felt the old war fire stir in his chest, the one that had made him stand in muddy fields when bullets sang past his ears. "Why come here?" he asked. "Why me?" She met his gaze, and for the first time her eyes steadied, a quiet steel beneath the ruin. "Because you're the only one who hasn't turned them away," she said. "And because they fear you more than you remember." He frowned, the words stirring ghosts he'd buried deep. "Fear me?" he scoffed. "I'm just a rancher." But the girl shook her head. "Not always." And as the first stars lit the bruised sky, the wind shifted, carrying with it a distant rumble like hoof beats. Her fingers dug into his sleeve. "Please," she whispered again, "take me far away." Jacob looked to the horizon, where the Blackridge Hills swallowed the sun whole, and felt the weight of the decision press on his soul. He could ride away now, leave her to whatever curse she carried, or he could stay and find himself once again in the crosshairs of a world that thrived on taking what little good was left. The old mare stamped. Uneasy, the knight waited, listening. Jacob Rourke took a long, slow breath and made his choice. "Get on the horse," he said. "If they want you, they'll have to go through me." She climbed up behind him, the sheet fluttering like a torn banner, and as they rode into the bleeding horizon, Jacob felt the past stir awake, the past of gunsmoke and debts unpaid, of names whispered in the dark, the marks on her skin burned. In his memory, symbols that tickled the edges of recognition, as if he'd seen them once, in another life, on the walls of a burning church. They rode through the night, the stars hard and cold, and behind them, on the ridge they had left, 3 riders appeared tall, black-coated, their horses pale as bone, their faces hidden by the brim of hats that cast no shadow. The girl clutched Jacob's coat, her breath a tremor against his back. "It's them," she whispered. "They'll never stop." Jacob gritted his teeth. Let them try. By dawn, they reached the edge of the Badlands, a place where the earth cracked open like an old wound, and there he dismounted, leading the horse into a gully where the sun could not reach. He turned to her, the sheet now filthy and torn, the marks beneath still faintly gleaming in the dawnlight. "Tell me everything," he said, the gruffness gone now, replaced by a grim resolve. She nodded, and her story spilled out like a dark river. How she had been taken from her father's ranch by men who spoke in riddles, how they marked her with their blessing, how they said she carried a key in her blood that would open the way for them to claim this land, not the cattle, not the gold, but the very bones of it. The old bones, the ones the tribes whispered about when the moon was high. She had escaped by accident, by luck, by a storm that broke their camp and scattered their plans. But they had hunted her ever since. "They call themselves the Covenant," she whispered, "and they want me to finish what they started." Jacob rubbed his temples, the scars on his hands itching as old memories clawed their way back, memories of a war no one had truly won, where men in the same black coats had ridden under a different banner, leaving towns ash and fields salted. "I thought I left all that behind," he muttered. "I thought peace meant something." She looked at him, eyes wide in the growing light. "Peace is what they hate most," she said. "Please, you don't understand. If they take me back, they'll mark the land too. No one will be clean again." The hoof beats came then, close and clear. Jacob turned, his hand on the revolver, and saw them at the ridge, the same 3, but now nearer, their coats rippling in a wind that hadn't yet reached the gully. Their horses' hooves made no sound on the stone. One raised a hand, and Jacob swore the shadow of it stretched far longer than any morning sun should allow. "Get behind me," he told the girl, the iron in his voice returning. "You wanted far away. We ride further still." He loaded his rifle, checked the cylinder of his Colt, and for the first time in years felt the old heat return, the one that didn't care about cattle or debts or broken fences, only about standing where no one else dared. The riders did not hurry. They knew the desert had few exits and fewer men willing to fight. But Jacob Rourke had already made his choice. When he pulled back that sheet, he wasn't running now. Not yet. They came at noon when the light was brightest and the air still. And what happened next would be told in whispers across the frontier for years to come. A rancher who once was more than a rancher, a girl marked by fire, and 3 men who never cast shadows again after that day. But that's a story for another sunset. For now, as the wind carries their trail and the land remembers every drop of spilled truth, we ride on. And if you want to know how far Jacob took her, and what price the past demanded in the end, then saddle up with us. Subscribe now, because this is only the first turn in a trail that runs darker, deeper, and far longer than any of us can ride alone.